CNN, 6 March 2023, the U.S. can more easily isolate China in the Pacific thanks to the Ukraine conflict. A year after Russia attacked Ukraine, Xi Jinping's support for Vladimir Putin has given Washington and its allies in the Pacific a chance to mend occasionally frayed ties at Beijing's expense. Japan has committed to doubling its defense spending and purchasing long-range weapons from the U.S. in the past few months alone. South Korea has also acknowledged the importance of Taiwan Strait stability for its security. The Philippines has announced new access rights to U.S. bases and is discussing joint patrols of the South China Sea with Australia, Japan, and the U.S. These might be the most significant actions, but they are by no means the only ones that have caused China to become more marginalized in its region as a result of its refusal to denounce Moscow's invasion of a sovereign nation and its continued use of force against the island nation of Taiwan. Experts believe that none of these events would have occurred without a war in Ukraine, but the conflict and China's support for Russia have made it easier to complete these projects. Consider Japan's post-World War II constitution only allowed for self-defense troops. It will now purchase long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles from the U.S., capable of striking deep inside China. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said at a significant defense conference in Singapore last summer, "I have a strong feeling of urgency that Ukraine today may be East Asia tomorrow." Kishida followed that up in December with a proposal to double Tokyo's defense spending while acquiring weapons with long-range capabilities. John Bradford, the senior fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies in Singapore, said that the Japanese people had taken note of the situation in Ukraine and felt more exposed as a people. China, which harbors resentment toward Japan, is the country that Japan feels most susceptible to. The People's Liberation Army has expanded and modernized its troops for many years. Beijing revealed its defense budget for 2023 on Sunday, which will rise by 7.2%. The military's budget growth rate rose for 3 straight years for the first time in the previous 10 years. The armed forces should intensify military training and preparedness across the board, develop new military strategic guidance, devote greater energy to training under combat conditions and make well-coordinated efforts to strengthen military work in all directions and domains, outgoing Premier Li Keqiang said in a government work report. Taiwan has long been under pressure from China's Communist Party, which is in power. Despite never having authority, it regards the island as part of its territory. Chinese leader Xi has repeatedly refused to rule out using force to reunite it with the Chinese mainland. It's feared that China may one day similarly handle Taiwan to how Russia treated Ukraine. According to Tokyo's top officials, Japan's defense depends on maintaining peace across the Taiwan Strait. Although that isn't particularly novel, Japan's sense of urgency is. Japan has been stepping up its defenses for a while. The political process for the main component of Kishida's new national security strategy, the anticipated next steps in this strengthening, was made simpler by the situation in Ukraine, Bradford said. The South Korean government is watching Taiwan in the present situation. According to recent comments by Foreign Minister Park Jin to CNN, peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait are necessary for peace and stability on the Korean peninsula, and it's indispensable for security and prosperity of the region. Seoul is concerned that if U.S. troops are involved in any conflict with China over Taiwan, Kim Jong-un in nuclear-armed North Korea will perceive South Korea as weak. This has prompted demands for South Korea to rely more on its self-defense, including some that it obtain nuclear weapons. Seoul and Tokyo collaborate more closely on defense-related issues, including joint naval drills with the U.S. Additionally, South Korea is experiencing increased demand for the weaponry it manufactures, such as fighter jets, howitzers, and tanks. With Poland, Ukraine's neighbor to the west and a member of the US-led NATO group, It entered into a multi-billion-dollar agreement to purchase all of those things. They are also being sold in the area. Korea Aerospace Industries has stated that it will sell 18 F-A-50 light fighter jets to Malaysia in the past month. The Philippines is another user of those F-A-50s. Additionally, Korea sells warships and offshore surveillance boats to Manila. The web of collaboration continues to grow in complexity. In the South China Sea, where China claims islands that the Philippines also claims, the US, Australia, and Japan are discussing with the Philippines about conducting combined patrols. Additionally, Manila decided to grant Washington more access to the archipelago's military facilities last month. Analysts claim that China may have been the Philippines' biggest enemy regardless of what it was doing regarding the Ukraine conflict. Rodrigo Duterte, the former president of the Philippines, disliked Washington and sought to cooperate with Beijing. However, the analysts said China never really expressed gratitude for that and that his successor, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., has demonstrated a desire to cooperate with the U.S. and its allies. Jeffrey Daniel, Director of Maritime Security at the Pacific Forum and Assistant Professor at Tokyo International University, said that it was challenging for the new Marcos administration to justify giving in to Beijing's preferences for policy when prior attempts to do so by the previous administration were not reciprocated. Blake Ertzinger, a non-resident fellow and expert on Indo-Pacific defense policy at the American Enterprise Institute, said Beijing's ongoing bullying, such as the incident in which the China Coast Guard recently used a laser to blind sailors from the Philippine Coast Guard, has only helped to make a case for a stronger alliance with Washington. Analysts claim that Filipinos feel the effects of China's pressure across the South China Sea. Singapore and Vietnam are now more welcoming of a more prominent U.S. presence. According to Daniel, they do not want China to rule Southeast Asia. However, analysts claim that the informal Quad alliance between the US, Japan, Australia, and India, a crucial American partnership in the Indo-Pacific, has not benefited from the conflict in Ukraine. India has not denounced Putin's invasion of Ukraine as the other three nations have. India rejected attempts by the US, Australia, and Japan to denounce Russia in a joint declaration. India asserted that the Quad only addresses issues in the Indo-Pacific. Since Russia is not a member of the region, this subject cannot be discussed, according to Derek Grossman, a senior military analyst at the RAND Corporation. But he claimed that the Quad's division doesn't detract from its primary objective. According to Grossman, the focus of the quartet is how to handle China.